Okay folks, this is a short update on what I've been doing since my last video. Basically, not a lot. I've been delayed in the refurbishment of my motor because I couldn't outsource the cable that I wished. So what have I done so far? The motor was entirely stripped and cleaned because it was really dirty, and once it was cleaned I discovered that the paintwork was sort of flaking off quite severely, so it got a new coat of paint as well. When I went to reassemble it, I noticed that a lot of the dirt had gained access to the motor via this hole. Now, I do have a grommet for it, but the cable wasn't as wide as the hole is for the grommet, and a lot of the dirt had sort of gained entrance that way. Not to mention there's a lot of air intake or exhaust in the casting, just for ventilation purposes. Now, my thought was initially just put a bit of sealant or masking, some sort of rubber material in the hole to prevent any dirt from getting in that way. And then I noticed that on the back of the motor, on the other side here, the other half of the casting, this small hole here, which is an oilway, was actually in the upright position like this, allowing for the oil to feed through gravity. So I thought that would be a good idea, because it obviously should be that way, and being in that orientation wasn't good for the bearing, the bearing being white metal. And if I also thought that if it was in this orientation, there'd be less likelihood of foreign material getting access to the motor via the grommet. When I went to do that, however, I encountered a problem. The wire from the motor itself to the terminal plate, or the wires, were too short. So I was going to buy a new wire and just solder in lengths like I've done here, but I couldn't find a wire with the correct grade. I did get some sections, I stripped bits out of washing machines and cookers and such like, so I got stuff of a similar diameter, but none of it was just exactly the same. Then I sort of decided that I would basically strip the terminal block from the back of the cabinet for the lathe. And this terminal block had 5 wires, 4 of which went directly to the motor. And as you can see here, there was no other sheath on them, they were just loose like this. So this was been the original fitted to the cabinet, I believe. So what I did was I basically just cut the ends with the eyes off it to the length that I required, about 3 or 4 inches, and then soldered them in there. Now what I did was, when I cut the cable, I cut the eyes off of this end, cut the cable from here, stripped both ends of the cable, soldered both ends, put the 2 ends together and then resoldered them so that they've got a good junction. Before I soldered them together, however, I cut 2 short lengths per wire of this heat shrink. Now this is actually the first time I've ever used it, and I'm quite impressed by it. I just kept one little short section up here and the other short section down here, because I was told that it reacts to heat very quickly. And then once the 2 cables were soldered, I moved one length down heated it gently with a lighter, and then when it shrunk into place I moved the second section up over it and heated it gently so it shrank on top of the first section. So I've got a double layer of insulation there on the soldered connection, and that's worked out quite well, I think. You know, it's neat, it's tidy, it looks okay. Now the other thing I did was, well, before I get to that, as I've now altered the orientation of this end of the motor, the original cable from the capacitor was too short. It was no longer of the correct or the required length to get to the terminal terminal plate rather. So I needed a new length of that. Now, as I was at it anyway, I thought, well, I'll alter the orientation of the capacitor as well, and I've reversed it. It was in this orientation, and I've simply turned it around into that orientation. So it means that the connections are now at the back here, out of the way, out of sight. It looks cleaner. It's just a neater job, and I've sourced a new bit of cable for it as well. Now the cable I've sourced isn't exactly correct, but it's as close as I could get, and I'm getting tired of looking for the right cable. It's 6.1 inches in diameter across the sheath, with a blue and a red insulated wires inside the sheath. As you can see on the original capacitor cable, we had a blue and a brown wire, and it was 6.5 millimeters in diameter across the sheath. It's a small point, but if you notice here, the cable does actually come through part of the housing of the capacitor, and it sort of helps prevent any strain on the soldered connections at the back of the capacitor. In a situation where the cable would get tugged possibly by something, then this helps prevent the terminals from getting damaged. So I wanted a nice, neat, tight fit on this support for the cable. Now I've still got to fit this cable and cut it to length, but once I've fitted this this casting to the end of the body, I'll then use this rubber grommet which fits into the front of the casting over here, and I'll give myself maybe 2 to 3 inches extra, and I might bear 1.5 inches to 2 inches off that to the wiring, so that the wiring can then be soldered. I'm going to put in where are they? These small ring connectors. They're crap. They're cheap dirt imported from China, but they're the only ones I can find of the correct diameter. The originals, I should have one of them here, were a sort of pressed affair made from some sort of tin. I've misplaced them for here we go. These were the originals. I don't know what metal they were made of, and that's not going to really focus very well, I don't think. But they were, I think the wire sort of wraps around it, and then the ends get compressed over the top. So I don't think there's any actual solder on those ring connections. They seem quite simple, and they're sort of just crimped together. But they're stronger, much stronger than these flimsy, cheap aluminium jobs. So I prefer the older type to these, but these are all that I can get. So yeah, that's about that. I'm going to try and get this completed either tonight or possibly tomorrow now, and then get it fitted to the lathe. And hopefully within the next, well, I'll not say when, but within a short period of time the lathe will actually be running, finally. Okay, thanks for watching, folks, and I hope this has been of help to you. Bye for now. Oh, one further thing. One of the things I had to do for this terminal plate here is these blue and yellow wires. They are actually soldered to points on the terminal plate. Not a big deal in itself, but all the rest are mounted to these sort of threaded bolt type arrangements, and then secured with nuts. These two were soldered directly to the board. I don't know what the function of these two wires are. I'm not very well studied in induction motors, but before I stripped the motor, I took sort of notes of all the cables that I was taking off, and you know, this was like a sort of simple orientation over the terminal plate and the wires going to it. And then I thought, well, depending on how I'm looking at the terminal plate, you know, which way around it is, it could be read incorrectly. So I made an extra little diagram down here, which works in the opposite orientation, but it's basically the same. Now, I forgot, however, to make note of which wire went to which terminal on the plate here. So I don't know if this is actually correct, these two. I think they are. I've got a vague recollection that was the orientation that was in before I took it off. But if not, it's a simple matter to resolder them in the opposite orientation. I made another little drawing here just the other night of the wiring going to the terminal plate, the capacitor and the motor from the cabinet block. And as you can see up here, the blue and the yellow don't go anywhere, but they actually go to a T4 and to a, is it Y? I think it's Y. T4 and Y on the drawing there. T4 is that little hole in on the left there, and Y is that bottom left pin there, which is come on, get some light. Well, it's there anyway. That blue one is. These two were obviously soldered, so it's definitely those two connections, but if it's in this orientation or the opposite orientation, I don't know. So yeah, that's that. If it's correct, you'll see the motor running. If it's not, I'll give you an update. Cheers for now. Bye.